This is a Tennessean Podcast Extra. I'm David Plazas, Deputy Opinion and Engagement Director of the USA Today Network, Tennessee. University of Toronto professor Richard Florida's latest book, The New Urban Crisis, was the focus of my latest column in the Costs of Growth and Change in Nashville series. You can find the series at housing.tennessean.com. The latest column is called, Is Nashville in an Urban Crisis? This recording is an addendum to a previously published podcast from our discussion on May 19, 2017. I explored with Dr. Florida some of his proposed solutions, specifically, 1. How to transform low-wage service work into middle-class family-supporting work. 2. How to update the tax code to make it less regressive and more fair. Finally, Dr. Florida shared his blunt observations about how to empower local communities and address the divide in America between urban, rural, and suburban communities, as well as the issues of state preemption of local power and the imperial presidency. Now on to the conversation with Dr. Florida. How do we start these conversations and actually create action so that businesses, employers, government, whomever, will create the kind of jobs that will allow people to support themselves and their families in urban centers?
Well, I think by showing them it's a win-win-win. It's a win for the business, it's a win for their city, their community, and it's a win for the worker. Basically we have now 65 million or so American jobs that are just bad, low-wage, blue-collar service jobs. They're people who work in food preparation or food service, people who work in retail shops and clerical offices, people who work in the caring professions. They take care of our children, they take care of our ailing parents, they take care of us when we're sick. They're largely women, and they're largely members of ethnic and racial minority groups. If a knowledge worker, say, makes 80, 90, 100 grand a year on average, a blue-collar worker makes 45 or 50 in a factory. One of these workers makes 20 or 25 grand a year, and they can't survive. They're doing 2 and 3 jobs and trying to make ends meet. And their jobs are not secure, they're contingent. So the basic idea is that if you pay workers better, and we did this in manufacturing, you pay workers better, you get them invested in their jobs, you involve them in teamwork, you tap their brain for sources of new ideas and innovation and improvement. And by doing that, they're going to give you better customer service, they're going to create more innovations, they're going to make the shop or the office run better, and they're going to add the productivity. There's a woman at MIT who's an operations researcher in the operations research group, very serious group at MIT, who shows that the companies that do this, the retail companies, the hospitality companies, the hotels that do this, companies like Zara or Costco, I can go on and on, Four Seasons, that pay their workers more, give them internal career ladders, involve them in their work. They have higher rates of productivity, they have higher rates of innovation, they have higher profits. So they have what you call a good job strategy. But maybe the best way to explain it is what we did for the manufacturing worker in the old American middle class. My dad always told me stories about the Great Depression. And he said to me, Rich, I had to go to work when I was 13. He had to leave the 7th grade in Newark, New Jersey to take up a job in a factory where he took his job. My grandfather worked in a factory, my grandmother worked in a bakery, and his 6 other siblings. It took 9 people to make one family wage. And in fact, 2 other families, my grandfather's 2 brothers lived in, they shared the same house. So it took probably 30 people working during the Depression, the 1930s, to support one household. My dad said he came back from World War II. He went right back to the same factory in Newark, New Jersey, Victory Optical, making eyeglasses. He said, as if by magic, his job that was a crappy, low-wage job that couldn't make ends meet, paid him enough so that he could get married, buy a home in the suburbs, have 2 boys, put his boys through Catholic school, because my dad thought it was better, put his boys through Catholic school, and then on to university, went to Rutgers University in New Jersey, or State University. We made manufacturing jobs good jobs. Henry Ford told us we needed to have a 5-hour day. We needed to pay people who made the cars enough to buy the cars. We encouraged workers to join unions and to bargain collectively, and that led to wage increases. We had New Deal legislation, which supported people and created a social safety net. We can do it, and we have to do it. So the point of fact is we can't condemn 2/3 of our population to low-wage work. It's not good for them. It's not good for the companies. Our city services and our service base isn't as good. Our hospitality and tourism isn't as good. And moreover, we create more money for the city. If those workers are making more money and buying more things, They're going to drive our city's economy and our national economy better. So for all those reasons, I think it's really, we need an urban by urban, city by city, suburb by suburb effort to do this. But we need a broad national effort led by the companies who get this, to work on how to make these low-wage service jobs better paying and better performing and more profitable jobs for their companies and communities.
Very good. And then the question on taxation, there's actually a case study that we're about to embark on, and it doesn't have to do with property taxes, but the state legislature approved the right of cities to hold a referendum on transit. So it would basically take a portion of the sales tax, the local option sales tax, to invest in transit programs. And the mayor here, Mayor Barry, plans to offer that referendum at some point next year. What are some of the things that city mayors can learn from ensuring that they can be effective at making these changes in the tax service to invest in city services successful?
Well, we were saying before, I think that cities need to be able to capture more revenues and keep more of the revenues they pay to state governments, they pay to federal government. So we know that our cities and urban areas, our leading edge cities and urban areas, are the ones that people pay in the most taxes, and they get the least in return. And in fact, our vibrant cities are subsidizing our suburbs, subsidizing the declining areas of the country, not vice versa. So one, we have to keep as much revenue as we can. The UK is doing this. In the United Kingdom, there is a national effort to devolve power and to give tax money back to the metropolitan areas and the cities, like in Nashville, the metro govs, if you will. So we've got to do that. We've got to be creative with new forms of revenue, like you said. We've got to make it so that cities can generate and use some of this revenue that is being collected to invest in their needs. The most important thing is that this power is local. Local communities know their problems best, know their opportunities best, know what to invest in, do the best job with the money. These can't come from a national or state top-down strategy. The thing I talked about in the book is, our property tax system that we have today, it's really not a progressive tax. It's a regressive tax. But worse than that, it encourages people sometimes to sit on property and not invest in it. And, there's an old idea but a good idea called the land value tax, which taxes people not on the value of their property and built up improvements, but taxes people on the value of their land. It basically says if you choose to make that land a surface parking lot and you choose to sit on it and let it decay, your tax rate goes up. The more you improve that land, the more you build on it, the more density you create, the more use you create, the higher the use, the better. The property tax actually goes down. So it encourages landowners to make the most and encourages cities to make the most of their property. And saying, no, we don't want development. No, we don't want this here. We don't want taller buildings. We don't want more intense use. So I think the other thing we can do is begin the conversation about shifting from the old property tax to a land value tax and other instruments that would encourage us to develop and use our cities and our land as effectively as we can.
Very good. And finally, any final advice for the people of Nashville, for the leaders of Nashville?
Well, I think, we're at a real inflection point in America. And it's not just that Donald Trump is our president. With all the trouble he's brought this country. And I'm a political independent. I don't have a stake in either one of these parties. I think that what we've got to realize is that Trump is a symptom of our problem. And we've concentrated way too much power in the presidency, way too much power in the executive branch. Now, when the president was good and competent, we didn't really notice it. But, we have this incredible instrument in America called federalism. We not only have a horizontal separation of powers between the executive branch and the legislative branch and the judicial branch, we have a vertical separation of powers between the federal government, state governments, and local governments. Over the course of the past century and a half, we've ceded more and more power to the federal part. We've given up power at the local levels. We've given up power at the state levels. We've turned the federal government and the presidency into a monster. They call it the imperial presidency. It is overblown and overpowerful. It's out of sync with the demands of an urbanized knowledge economy where there is no one-size-fits-all. So I think what we've got to do is dial that back, and it's a big struggle and a big effort. We've got to say that we're going to give power not just to our states, we've got to give power to our cities, because we're going to give power to our suburbs. We're going to let people run their places the way they want, make the investments. And, as we've been talking about, the only way to overcome the divide in America is to realize we're two countries and not to get in each other's face all the time. So I think that's part of the problem. People in one America are worried that people in the other America are going to impose their values, their ideas, the way they want to live on the other, and they're scared. So let's just say, let's have a cool out period. Let's have a chilled out period. If you want to live in a suburb or a rural area, that's where you want to live. That's fine. If I want to live in the urban area and have density and transit, that's fine. I'm not going to impose my way of life on you. If some communities want to do things, and people would say this, well, it's difficult. We don't want to give up on rights. We don't want to give up hard-fought rights. Of course I don't want to give up on hard-fought rights like civil rights or women's rights or gay rights. But the point of fact is that states are retracting them. States are preempting. States are causing all sorts of problems, and the federal government is in this thing. The more important thing right now is that we need multiple protections and multiple safeguards. Strong local governments are the best protection and best safeguard we have. So that's where I think we've got to go. And to be honest, I can see tremendous support lining up for that on the left and the right. There are the best thinkers on the left who want to move to this, the best thinkers on the right. Like Yuval Levin writing about our fractured republic and how cities need to lead. But most importantly, the most sensible politicians we have in America are our mayors. And, when I go to Nashville or Indianapolis or Columbus, and I could go on, Louisville, Lexington, San Francisco, I can't tell who's a Democrat and who's a Republican if they're leading a city. They all want the same thing. I literally can't. So my kind of dream, I think this is what I'd like folks to think about, my kind of dream is in the next election cycle, after we get over this national nightmare that we're going through, that the Democrat and Republican come together, two mayors. Could be your mayor. Could be former Mayor Nutter of Philadelphia. Could be former Mayor Hickenlooper of Denver, who's now the governor of Colorado. Could be former Mayor Martin O'Malley. Could be any. And that the Democratic mayor says, you know what? I'm going to take a Republican mayor. Nick Cornett of Oklahoma City, who happens to be the chairperson of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I'm going to run on a bipartisan ticket to make America truly great again. Not fake great again, truly great. The way we're going to do that is we know we've heard you. Washington is out of touch. The federal government is too big. You don't believe in the Congress. You don't believe in us. You don't believe the federal government gets you. You don't want the federal government to dictate how you want to live or how you want to develop. We're going to give you the power to make your city, your suburb, your community great. We're going to hand you back your tax dollars. We're going to give you the tools you need to build America as a united cities of America, as a united communities of America. We're not going to do it anyway the old way from the federal government. We're going to empower each and every one of these local communities, suburbs, and areas to build the way they need to build, to live the way they want to live, and we're going to respect each other and get over this divide. It seems like a pipe dream today, but that's the way we've got to go. And I think, when you look at the surveys, when you look at the opinion polls, Americans have lost faith in their federal government, they've lost faith in their state governments, but they still have a lot of faith in their local governments and their communities. And this coalition of forces among mayors of both parties, that are thinkers of both parties, at least gives me a strain of hope that we have a way forward by empowering localities and people to live and build the way they want to. So that's where I think we've got to go. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a long path, but that's where we have to go. And that's, folks in Nashville have to help lead this. So we all got to get together and do it and make it happen.
Well, Dr. Florida, I want to thank you so much for your time. The book was fascinating. I enjoyed reading it. I was thinking about it the other day. I was invited to an event where we have a sister city, Belfast, Ireland, where they had the Lord Mayor and two members of the council who were here visiting, and it really touched home at why it's so important to really invest in other cities across the world.
And this is just the start. I just want to say before you end, I'm going to be writing more on the devolution of power and local empowerment. I'm going to be writing more on our urban and suburban and rural divide. I'm going to be working closely with mayors and economic developers and city builders. This is the start of a long process. As I've said, if it took 10, 15 years to bring our cities back, it might take 10 or 15 years to make them more inclusive, but it's something we've got to do. And it's really the next agenda of the urban agenda. So thank you for having with me, and thank you for being part of this conversation and this long path.
Absolutely. Well, take care, and congratulations again for your family, and best of success to you.
And I hope to see you soon in Nashville. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Thank you.